Right, okay. Let's open this Risk and Assurance Committee meeting. And are there any apologies? No apologies. No public forum. No late items on the agenda. Excellent, we've done page 1 already. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest that need to be declared for the meeting? None noted. First item, page 5, our minutes of the previous meeting taken as read. Are there any corrections or comments? Can I have a mover, please? Mayor Scott, second Councillor Steve. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. First item on the agenda in terms of our reports, item 7.1, the draft management report. I won't make any comments, thank you. All right, thank you, Tracy. No. Take it as read, but any highlights and further information, thank you.
Right, hi everyone. Apologies from Sarah. She was actually booked in for annual leave this afternoon because we expected this when she booked it to be a morning meeting, so I'm stepping in. So, the management report that came from audit this time, you'll probably remember when we went through the audit sign-off that the audit went extremely well this year, and we only had a few recommendations as opposed to any audit points per se. This is the management report that comes out of that process that was summarised to confirm what we need to work on for their review when they come through for the annual report as of the 2026 year end. The main 4 points that were raised this time was, as you can see on the report, is the sensitive expenditure, severance and other employment disclosures, review of IT, access report, and remuneration record keeping. Sensitive expenditure is that is being, through the process, is still being reviewed, that policy. And it's also some reporting that they would like us to be doing proactively around that as well as management reporting, which we would like to be bringing to council. A lot of the reporting that since I've been here has been waiting on the system to be able to support it. There is a lag in the data that comes through in our system to be finalised down, which is why we currently only do quarterly reporting. So since I've been here, we've been working hard in the background to get the systems up to speed with one of our software suppliers to be able to start running these things more timely. But in the process, pending that, there is some high-level sensitive spending we can bring, which really just will talk to anything that's triggering that policy. So that's still being worked on, and they've made a comment on that, saying that that's one of the controls of the council that we should be highlighting in our reporting. Severance and other employment disclosures. We had the disclosure in the note wasn't as internally controlled as what we would have liked. We have been advised to set up some independent general ledger accounts in the system so that finance has full transparency and not just referring to a working Excel spreadsheet, which we need to refer to when we do the audit, and so do the auditors, but their recommendation is to get it more clear inside the actual reporting system. That's what that point is. IT system access. That's a couple of points, just ensuring that we've got the tight controls around who actually has access to what in their logins, and also the second second signature on not on purchase orders, on invoices that go straight through to the accounts payable system and don't go through the PO system. That's been a bit of a to-do, to be honest, but we are on the last legs of testing that now after we've gone back to our software supplier asking for a couple of other things to be done on that software upgrade so that it will work in compliance with our internal controls. These things keep going backwards and forwards, but it's looking like we're nearly there with that as well and should be there before they get back to us. And the remuneration record keeping, that's the same thing, a bit more transparency inside the financial folders at audit year end, so that they can see the continuity between the HR and the finance management of those processes, because finance is bound by confidentiality at the same levels as what HR is. So they wanted to see that continuity to make sure that the number area is definitely cohabiting in that environment with HR, and our records were probably not as coherent between the two departments as what they would have liked, so we'll just tidy those up as well. Now these will go into the risk, it's not a register, internal controls to work on.
Yeah, the assurance recommendations that we report through from Audit New Zealand.
So they'll go in there and they'll be visible for us to sign them off, and these will have a further sign off from the external auditors when they come through doing the report for 26. The other ones that got cleared, they've been sitting there for a little while. They came back and we're very pleased to see that we've finalised those internal controls as well since in our last annual report. That's my summary. I will take questions. I may have to take away some points as well, just to dig in a bit deeper. As you know, Sarah has this off the top of her head, not always me.
Thank you. Tracy, any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. You would have been disappointed, I'm sure, if I didn't. Tracy, thanks for the update. Mine's more of a question about the audit process, and perhaps Chair Phillip, you might be able to help with this. It did jump out at me that we had 4 new written recommendations and 2 verbal since we had the conversation and agreed our annual report. None of those are material to change my decision, but what does concern me somewhat is we did make a decision based somewhat on incomplete information. Is it reasonable for our auditors to provide additional recommendations without any heads up of those at a later date? If it is reasonable, if that's standard practice, that's fine, but I found it intriguing.
Okay, so the formal process from the audit is what we brought to the council for the report sign-off, anything that may significantly impact the report. There was also in that reporting at the time conversation of verbal recommendations. This is the next level down again, where we haven't had internal conversations with the auditors. It's around tightening up internal controls, not at-risk internal controls, just best practice. So these are next tier down again with severity, and don't pose any risk on the actual accuracy of the data that's coming through. It also speaks to the risk management of the council as well, these things as well, not necessarily just about the accuracy of the materiality of the figures. And Philip.
I'm happy to add, and don't disagree with anything that Tracy has already talked about. The purpose of, I think we've got to take a step back. The purpose of Audit New Zealand is to provide an audit opinion as to the overall reasonableness of material correctness of the annual report. So that's what they have done. What they've now done is, as Tracy's alluded to, they have identified areas that would help reduce their audit work going forward. It would also then help, as Tracy's also said, improve our internal control. So it's quite, this is normal practice. In fact, that you've only got 4 points is good. I mean, heck, I was an auditor once, and we've been trained to always find something new. It's in our blood, and we can't, just like the word excellent doesn't exist in our vocabulary. The other thing too is I think it's important, I think Tracy might have missed this, is often a draft management letter is sent to council so they can actually validate some of the assumptions that audit have actually made to verify that these are issues that can be dealt with. And I've been on the receiving end of those when the auditor's actually got it wrong and we've been able to correct them and it's actually been withdrawn from between the draft and the final. So it's just disappointing it takes a wee while after the adoption of the annual report before we get this letter, but there's a due process. Any further questions?
I'll just add to that. There was no surprises in this for the finance team. We've had lengthy communications. A couple of these on it, we actually requested they put it in writing so that we can put it onto our register and get it corrected for next time. So it was sort of a partnership, this report as well. Yeah.
Any other questions? Tracy would be disappointed. No, you don't get off that easily. You might not have to talk to Sarah, but just a little bit interested, on page 14, 4.2, we talk about the verbal recommendations. Understand the capitalisation, that's fine, but just maybe a little bit more information about the corruption of the water invoice and what actually happened there, and was it a once-off or is it an ongoing issue?
I think it's still it is still under investigation. We know that it corrupted because we went to search the database looking for an invoice in this batch. So it's still sitting with IT to work out how it corrupted. I believe it's a one-off, but we haven't had that confirmation yet whether there's actually a system control issue in there or whether this was more about a one-off situation where the data got opened and left open and then not closed effectively.
Thank you for that. If there's no further questions, can I have a mover for the recommendation on page 13? Councillor Steve. Do I have a second? Councillor Peter. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Thank you very much, Tracy. Next item is the Assurance Management Report. Welcome, Stephen. Take your report as read, as per normal. Key highlights and further information.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chair Phillip. So yes, this is the Assurance Management Report, and in here we have just a status update for any policies that are new or due for review and where they're at, because policies form the basis of our control environment. And then the rest of the report covers off our Audit New Zealand and internal audits. And there's also a specific item in there on the water rates issue raised by Audit New Zealand, where you'll see that we've taken the corrective actions, but there is a further report to come back to the committee once the investigation into the circumstances is complete.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Peter, thank you.
I'm casting back my memories 3 months ago to the last meeting we had, and I think we had an issue with the dates previously, and I noticed now that they've been updated to expected completion date and due date, and so that was much appreciated. Just a comment to see that, and that makes it much clearer and easier to read.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I do want to make a comment around the similar topic. There still is some concern where dates seem to be You know, we come up to the meeting and then like it's very good to be able to visually see that now. But I think it does still show the concern of putting a date in there and then putting a line through it and then putting another date. My request through to the team is to review all of those dates to get a realistic due date, and then one that this committee can really drill down on and question if that date slips. It does feel a bit easy just to add an extra date onto it. So I think it's a duty of this committee to monitor slippage.
Thank you, Chair Phillip. I just want a definition clarified, please. Revised but on track. Is that revised up? Is it derailed or going backwards?
Yeah, so that terminology we've borrowed from the reporting that's done on projects through other committees. So trying to keep the reporting the same in terms of terminology. So revised but on track for us means that the original due date that was given is not going to be met, but a new due date has been set, and the project manager or whoever has the action is working towards that date and happy that that date is good, as opposed to off track where we don't expect to meet the due date and the project is off track. I don't know if does that help, if I made that clear.
In a way, yes, but does finance come into it? Well, it could go off track if you have a financial blowout where you'd hit a junction and go, ooh. So is that backtrack?
Yeah, so in this case, it's just referring to, is the project on track to meet its completion date? So it doesn't relate, for these items in this report, it doesn't relate to finance directly. So for example, if we've got, say, the data and information management policy, which is in the policy section, which is revised but on track. So our original date of December 25 wasn't met, but we do expect to meet the April 2026 due date.
So just for our ease, because I don't want to go back and compare this report to the previous report, can I ask that if a date changes on your register, if you could just put that in a different colour perhaps, so that we could easily identify, and then we can ask the question, well, why did this move again? Because revised but on track, we could have exactly the same problem Mayor Scott was talking about a moment ago, where everything's keeping on sliding and that we don't know. So just respectfully asked if we could have a different colour if it moves between reports. That'd be great.
Thank you, I concur with that. Look, I'm also concerned about the slippage in dates, and some of it is understandable. But what I'd be really keen, and without trying to burden staff, is what are the consequences of the date slippage, right? So, and, were we in some of the, let's have an honest conversation, were we too ambitious? Or we underestimated the amount of work that was actually required. So I think that's something just for staff to consider.
Thank you, Phillip. I think that's very helpful direction, so I appreciate that. I would also note as well that we have indicated in our commentary where it is a new policy versus where it is a revision, which does give some information to that effect. But yes, we can add those impacts in. Thank you.
Right, any further questions or comments? So if we go back to the covering report, we've got
Sorry, I was jumping down to part 6. topics of that, with your permission, which is investigation into errors with the direct debit process. The first one on there was ensuring council has a resilient structure and plan in place, etc. This is one where I am concerned with the date being slipped out, particularly because of the impact that error had. Reading this doesn't give me the level of assurance that I feel that our community would expect. I do know, which may not be captured fully in this report, that there is a lot of work going on and there's a lot of other controls in place. I feel that we need more narrative in that space to be watching it much, much more closely. So I'm open for any comments on that, please.
I actually thought I'd put quite a lot of narrative in there, so can you be a little bit more specific, if you don't mind, with the sort of controls you were expecting to see inside there?
More than happy to. I think what I'm concerned the most about is that we haven't been able to close that one off. I absolutely appreciate that there's been work going on there. Even reading the narrative that's in there, respectfully, Tracy, that doesn't give me certainty that we have that covered. So I know that may be a difficult request, but I think for the time that's passed, we do require some certainty in that area, that we have a resilient structure with a plan in place to provide cover and succession planning for key roles. So I need assurance that we have that.
Sorry, back through you, Chair. So the narrative that we will have all that, are you talking specifically to we haven't actually finalised the recruitment? Is that where we're sitting at? I've talked to cross-training, and all the three-person capability across the functions of the teams, which for me tells me that that's very strong team management, but I haven't finalised the recruitment. So I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit lost. I know we haven't done the recruitment, which is a complete sign-off. I understand that part. Is there anything else that you want me to go away and think about that, because I feel I've covered it, so I'm now a little bit of a loss of what's on your mind.
Well, thank you. I'm more than happy to share what's on my mind, Tracy. I think what I need to see in there very, very clearly, if that is the only thing that is stopping that being closed out, for that to be explicitly reported. So to be explicitly reported that all of those things are covered, that we have a level of assurance that that request is covered and we don't have a risk of failure in that area, and the only thing outstanding is that recruitment question. So that has given me some comfort that you were at loss with that. I think perhaps it's being very, very explicit in what is left to cover that would make me feel more comfortable. Thank you.
Thanks. Through you, Chair. Yes, I understand now. And we're not fully cross-trained either, because the full recruitment is, we have to have that to be able to. So, yeah, I'm sorry, it's sort of a bit of a work in progress at the moment, but I think we now agree on what the finishing line looks like. Am I correct on that? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments before we go back? Oh, sorry. Oh my, I'm not on my...
Thanks, Chair Phillip. I have to concur with Mayor Scott's comments, Tracy, and I get your concern about, well, what is quite explicit in this. When I got to the end of this narrative, I had the sense that we won't have this all closed off till May. There's two areas in there that you say there's a draft report yet to be approved. You've noted issues around the recruitment. And so for me, in my agreement with Mayor Scott, it was about making sure we need to be assured that all of those jigsaw puzzle pieces have come together. And there's bits and pieces of it, and I note the word hope is used a little bit in here as well. So am I to understand very clearly that May 2026 is when everything will be in place with the tests, that you've got rid of the alpha and all of the other stuff that have to be used to run and be assured, but hand on heart, when is it we can promote to the community and start to rebuild the trust that it's all been addressed? Is May the deadline now?
I just want to note that the May date, that item is assigned to our new chief executive. So we will work with him to make sure that timeframe is going to fit, and obviously relies on all the other items being completed before we can do that last item. That's what that item is closing off the project, closing off all the recommendations that we received through the investigation. So that one will be delayed if the other ones are delayed. So they look like they're to be finished in March. So for the next Audit and Risk Committee in April, you should see closure of those. But if Tracy has any comments on that.
We're working through the recruitment process, so until that's concluded, we have 2 contractors in that are temporarily covering and learning and providing relief to the team for the 2 permanent roles that we are recruiting for in the market at the moment. So we do have feet on the ground now, which is how we're achieving the cross-training and the cover for other roles and the spreading of the human resource across the demand in the team, which is where the stress was coming from to be able to timely address some of the queries and issues that were coming through. So we now have all those feet on the ground, but the permanent recruitment and the finalisation of that process can only be done with time, unfortunately.
Thank you, Chair Phillip. Yeah, concurring with Mayor Scott and Deputy Mayor Sharon. Yeah, I just don't want it to turn into a steeplechase. Yeah, we get to the finishing line and then all of a sudden there might be another hurdle. And yeah, to be fair, this is what our job is. And as our Mayor said, we want certainty. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Look, just to support Tracy, I understand the scale of the issue for Tararua, and as it came in and understood, and Tracy as well came in. I mean, a lot of it goes to the heart of your process, and frankly, I think you're under-resourced in this area. And the under-resource created stress that opens the room for error. The day-to-day work builds up, and you get a sort of a compounding thing, and morale suffers accordingly. So, and certainly that's no recipe for confidence going forward. So the call, so working with Tracy and with Sandy, we've addressed that. I've approved the resourcing, increasing the resourcing in this area, as well as essentially band-aiding through contractors till we get the permanent staff on board. But once we have the resourcing there, I think we can be able in a position to give elected members much more confidence, because we will be able to delve into, give ourselves assurance that the processes are right over and above also dealing with BAU, and the two tend to overwhelm each other. That's why there needs to be a resource. So my own view is that this council, but others as well, tend to under-resource the rates in, which of course is, in my view, one of the most fundamental things we need to get right, because it goes to our revenue raising. And at the end of the day, it's a tax, so it has to be right, and people have to have confidence. But it goes back to, I think, a starting point for Tararua is ensuring the resourcing is matched to the task, and Tracy is addressing that. But it is a market that is competitive. Everyone wants this. In fact, opening up for a later debate, which we'll have, is that if there's one area where shared services could be usefully employed, particularly with smaller councils in the areas of rates and that type of thing. But look, I just want to support the Chief Financial Officer and Sandy, just that's the first step. We need to get these people in place, if only to alleviate the stress, improve morale, then address to the level of confidence you quite appropriately need that the process is correct. And allowing you to rebuild that trust, Deputy Mayor. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and the Chief Executive was obviously trying to sweeten me up with talk of shared services, and it's worked. So thank you. I do want to acknowledge that the Chief Financial Officer and the Chief Executive has inherited this, but it is still something that we need to be looking at closely. So my question through you, Mr. Chair, either to the Chief Executive or the Chief Financial Officer, is what is your level of confidence that each of those items will be ticked off by the due dates reported in this report? So there's a number of due dates reported in this report. What is the level of confidence in those due dates?
I believe I'm already actively working towards that with the temporary staff that's in place, and the plan is to have an overlap that staff will then train the permanent staff that we recruit, as long as so I can sign off saying it is now being actively worked on, and depends on whether you want to say whether permanent's being recruited for it or not, but the control within the team will be there, and has already started, so by the end of March will be in place to the reasonableness of how fast someone can learn and cross-train.
Through you, Chair, I suppose the residual risk is that the recruitment falls over at the 11th hour. There's always that chance. I understand that's not the case at the moment, but you can never rule it out. If that happened, then we'd have to reevaluate, presumably. But that's not on the cards at the moment, I assume.
No, I believe that we've put in place effective start of last week, a structure that will deliver to my acceptable standards and good practice of internal controls and controls processes within the team. There will always be an element of risk inside a transactional team, and we build controls around that to keep them at an absolute minimum.
Thank you, Chair Phillip. Yeah, so risk is there. It's all there and anywhere. But here's the question I would like to ask: what percentage increase is your department or this part of the department being increased by?
20%, 15, 20%.
20%?
15 to 20.
So there was a reduction in the team over the last 2 years by headcount, so we're fairly well just replaced that back.
So the question probably is more like, how did you ascertain to go to 15 or 20, or do you need to go further? There must be a formula there.
No, it's not as scientific as that. There's a judgment to be made, councillor, in terms of the understanding the work program, understanding the degree of stress on the staff, the task in hand, the importance of the task. So a judgment is made. I get recommendations on that. I make my own judgment, take my own advice, and then make a call. My call was you are under-resourced in a mission-critical area, and so I've addressed it. So that's, in my view, I concur with the Chief. It's probably around the 15% odd mark, but we can go and do a calculation. I'm not sure that would add much value personally, because you need the resource. Yeah.
I'm going to add 2 pennies worth. Unfortunately, I've got basically two roles in life, right, at the moment. Seems to be chairing audit and risk committees. The other one tends to be dealing with rates in terms of both policy and operational issues. Just reinforcing what the Chief Executive has said about rates officers. Good rates officers are like hen's teeth, and unfortunately it's a skill that is learnt on the job, and a lot of the good ones have got hair the same colour as me, and they're leaving the sector for a variety of reasons, which then puts stress. And I know of one council that's got just about over the last 5 years would have an entire new rates team. And that to me is not a good position to be in, because as the Chief Executive has alluded to, this is a tax and we can't afford as a sector to get it wrong, and we know the consequences of actually getting it wrong. It plays with people's lives dramatically. It has a dramatic impact on people's lives when we get it wrong. And, you don't need, if you look further south than here, I don't want to poke the stick at a significantly larger council, but they've had two major mistakes within their rates, right? And I don't know what's happening there. So you've got to get the right level of staffing and the right skill level, and sometimes that takes time, right? But I agree with you, we need assurance that we will have the right level of staffing and skill to undertake those functions. Councillor Peter.
Changing topic slightly and just picking up on a couple of things on the shared services side. What would be the impact if we were to pick up another council of a similar size and take on their rating? Would we need to double our team, or would we be able to increase it by 50 or 70%? And then if we went on to a third council, I'm trying to think of the things. So perhaps while we've got Malcolm in the room for the last time, he might be able to comment on that.
I don't think you can just look at it like that, Councillor. You'd want to scope the business case in sense of what is the nature of the task. I mean, in principle, you should get efficiencies because the activity is the same, it's process-driven, and then you drive for an efficiency. So in a process-related thing like that, ought to have some scale and scope efficiencies, I would have thought. So I would be coming back by, rather than do it on an adding to basis, is what's the nature of the value proposition you're putting together, who would like to be party to that discussion, and then go from there. And I'd put it up like that, and you construct it that way. Doing add-on is sort of almost like a cost-plus mentality, and I'm sure that that's sort of counterproductive to the task we're trying to do, which, remember, we're looking at things through the lens of rates affordability, so we need to strive to find efficiencies. In principle, I think the efficiencies are there. What we need in the system is incentives to seek out those efficiencies, which is, as you know, one of the subject of our simplifying submission to the government, and I think we can offer something there, and hence my buttering up of his worship earlier.
Can I just add to that as well?
Can I just say, right, we could talk about, right, maybe, right, I like the idea of, I actually don't like the way of shared services, I like the way of a contract for service rather than shared service, but I think the issue is this is probably not the forum to actually have that discussion, right, unless Tracy's got something critical to add to the report. Thanks, Tracy.
This is not about shared services. I think it's a good time actually while we're talking about change as well, just to give you a rundown of actually what the team does. So they calculate the instalment invoices that go out to charge people rates. Every year they reset direct debit calculations, which is where this error came from in the first place. So all data must be up to date. It must be done timely to make sure that the new calculated rates for the new financial year now their direct debit drawdowns now represent that mathematical division into the direct debits. This team also receives all subdivision requests and goes through quite a lengthy process to calculate the parcelling of the land and the subdivision. They work with QV to make sure that it's all done correctly. They search titles and previous owners, all as quite an encompassing, processed And we get at least probably 7 or so a week of those each time, which is usually 2 to 4 hours at least of collating the information, and then a really extensive application to the Rates Act to understand exactly what rates apply to those parcels of land. They also do a lot of other things with, they receive quite a lot of queries from customers about what their rates are as well. And there's many other things. They're providing LIMS information as well. So this team is anything to do with a charge on a land. They are actually answering all those queries, understanding all the statute law that goes around it. They work very closely with all the statute laws to be able to provide all this information and calculate rates correctly. So the actual instalment run and the recalculation of the DDs is actually probably only about 20-25% of what the team's actually doing on a daily basis. It's really important. We don't want to get it wrong, but you can see where the challenge of resourcing is coming from within the team, because everything has a deadline as per the statute as well. So just to give you a bit of understanding of what this team is encompassing, and therefore to talk about shared services, is it this team or is it a part of this team that would go on to shared services? Yeah.
Okay, no further discussion, no further comments. We've got a recommendation on page 27. We're happy for that, for someone, you're happy to move it? Thank you, Councillor Sharon. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Peter. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Is against carried. Our next report, 7.3, our risk management report, page 41. Thank you again, Stephen.
Thank you. So this is our regular risk management report. Just wanted to make a couple of points. Firstly, just in section 3, last time you asked about more detail with emerging risks around legislation changes, and you'll see that we haven't quite got that here yet, although we did do an update at the last committee meeting. But what I'm planning to bring to you from next time is a report based around Tai Tuara legislation tracker, so that we can keep an eye on that regularly. I also just wanted to say that I was reviewing the tables in this report, and the columns are not consistent across, as in some of the tables talk about residual risk rating and some talk about whether the controls are verified. So it is something to keep an eye on as you're reading it. Some of the tables have different information. Other than that, I think I also wanted to point out that we've got the long-term plan project top risks. That's item 6. Now, these are the project risks and not the actual risks and strategic risks that the long-term plan is addressing. This is, as requested, the risks related to being able to deliver the long-term plan project. And the final one that was asked for last time, which is at point 7, is the project risks relating to the Three Waters transition, which I was hoping Peter might be here, but he's not to talk to if required. Yes, so that's the highlights from this report. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair Phillip. Page 43, Steve, item 48, iwi and Māori partnerships. I get a bit nervous when I see words like things are overdue for sign-off, and I'm just mindful that even though, as you've noted in your narrative, working with iwi has changed over a period of time, I don't think we should let this lie on the table for too much longer. Appreciate that with a new CE coming in there, they may have some different insights to share, but I would like to see some attention just from a perspective of us as governors at a more strategic level, that this is not something that we can afford to remain overdue for a long period of time. Thank you, Chair Phillip.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Page 48, looking at the transition. I was just a bit curious to see the direction political / governance / legislative risk still being highlighted in there, still in yellow. Reason being is it's done. We have a new council, but regardless of the new council, it's been agreed, it's been done, it's been accepted by government. So just wonder if I'm missing something there, or if that should just be closed off, because I don't think that there is a council political risk to the project.
Through you, Chair. Actually, I think that's fair comment, Your Worship. Certainly from a council perspective, the section 22, if I recall, of the Preliminary Arrangements Act 24 compels councils who have an approved water services delivery plan to execute that plan. So it's a must, not a if you feel like it. So from a council perspective, I think that commitment's there. From an overall governmental risk perspective, I'm inclined to your point of view there too, because obviously the present administration is committed to seeing it through, but I understand, though this may be a point worth checking, that the opposition are also of the view that this is not something they would revisit, in which case the issue around water reform probably is lower risk, though that's not to say there couldn't be changes in the broader regulatory environment around the Commerce Commission or something like that, but the institutional arrangements will flow through. Probably the bigger risk is just general local government settings anyway, is where the risk. But actually, on reflection, Your Worship, I think you're right to identify that. Yeah.
You feel the bad cop now. Right. Look, I agree, LTP project, and this is probably about the project, but just for everyone's information, next month I've got to do 4 or 5 presentations on LTPs as part of the Tautura roadshow on predominantly financial strategy. And my message to everyone is the LTP is going to be turned on its head. Has to be turned on its head with all the reforms and all the pressures that we've actually got. So I'll save my discussion on that, but I think the LTP project then needs to reflect that this is not the LTPs that have been done in the past. This is going to require quite a different approach, and I'm pleased to see that it's actually already on your agenda already, not waiting till you get through this annual plan. Certainly, thanks.
If I can respond to that, Chair, certainly it's been my advice to this council that very point, that this LTP is not like previous LTP process, but primarily because of the political risk component, that which occurs at a number of levels. For example, the most obvious and easy one is that year 1 of the mooted rates cap will be year 3 of so in that first 3 years, which is critical from your financials, is actually going to have to formally encompass an understanding and an assessment of how the rates cap will work, and based on the formula as we understand it, that could yet change, but let's, for the sake of argument, call it 4%. So LTPs that have 11.25 and that are a thing of the past, except for those things encompassed by the rate cap, and that's still a work in progress. We have the other issues around, you correctly point out, Chair, about the simplifying local government work that the government's doing. It'd be no surprise to anyone in this room to say I think that work is undercooked and bears some significant improvement. There's not a criticism of officials. I understand the constraints they're working within, but the bottom line is it's at large, and we don't know. But to be fair, we have to proceed as we have to proceed, understanding we need to be nimble as things change and understand where that will take us. And certainly I think our GM responsible for the LDP understands that. She's nodding yes. So
the other issue that I have here, we've talked about a little bit in terms of the three waters. I'm really nervous about the responsibilities that the new water entity might actually ask the councils to do some of the functions. Particularly, I note that here it's got on page, where are we, 50, that we're going to advocate that the CCO is responsible for billing from day one. I am hearing stories of councils who have got significant challenges with the CCO achieving that. And that to me is a major risk for the council, because the CCO can actually ask for councils then to carry on doing it for some time. Yes, it's got to be by way of negotiation, but the process of setting up a billing system and transferring that over when you're amalgamating 4 council rating databases and getting that right, in my opinion, is a high risk.
If I may respond, Chair. Look, I concur there. I think I differentiate two things. First of all, the accountability for revenue, in my view, does rest with the CCO. That is the purpose. Revenue certainty, revenue adequacy. That they may choose, pending determination of their own billing systems, to utilise the rating power of their shareholding councils is true, and that's why it's on our risk project. Our particular CCO is, on an IT side, is looking at billing systems as well. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case in our particular CCO. Of course, that's subject to the views of the yet to be appointed directors of the CCO, who I would imagine, based on the likely candidate pool, will bring a very commercial and technical approach to that. If it transpires, then the project will have to react to that and understand it. But it would be, I think, fair to say that my view would be unwise for a shareholding council of any CCO to assume that they're out from the day. They should be prepared and able to do that should that occur, because, as you say, the CCO can require it. Yeah.
I'm just and why I'm raising it as a risk is I'm aware of some councils that are actually modifying their systems already to actually, because while you're saying it's using the rating system, technically you can't use the rating assessment. It's got to be a separate invoice from council that actually requires often some modification. Right?
The IT work stream and the CCO is a significant aspect of the establishment of the CCO.
Thank you.
Chair Phillip, yeah, just a simplistic one. So in a simple term, the ratepayer will have 3 envelopes coming to them: rates, water and power.
And it's through you, Chair, and it's simple to, leaving aside the point that the Chair has raised about rating, ultimately the same person, the same customer, the same consumer will be paying rates to its local government, income tax to the central government, electricity bills if they have a contract with an electricity provider, gas bills if they have a gas bill provider, telecommunications bills and water bills, yes. But it won't be in the fullness of time a rate per se, Councillor Steve, it'll be a bill. But one thing that we're aware of, obviously we need to understand that it's the same person paying. So viewed from the overall rates issue, that's something, that on my view, as you all know, councillors, your worship, that elected members should be cognizant of that overall financial impact on our community.
Just to clarify that, I didn't say bill, I said envelope.
Yes, I was about to say it's unlikely that in the future there'll be envelopes anymore.
So I just want to clarify, I think I've heard this right, but I just want to clarify it in my own head. The CCO can ask us to bill on their behalf from the 1st of July 2027. And we can't turn them down.
I think it's time limited though. I'd have to check that for a while. It can't go on forever. Am I incorrect on that, Chair?
No, okay, no, I think it's 5 years. Yeah. 5 years seems to be a magic number for transition as part of the water reforms. There's a whole lot of other transition as well.
But through your Chair, I would expect a competent board who have employed a competent chief executive with a competent executive team to be early on ensuring that their billing systems are state of purpose. So if a CCO is relying on a 5-year window to use the rates, well, I'd be, if I was a shareholding council of such a CCO, I'd be putting in my state letter of expectation something different.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments and discussion on this report? Then none being, right. Can I have a mover for the recommendation? Thanks, Councillor Steve, seconded Mayor Scott. All those in favour, please say aye. As against, carried. Next item is our risk appetite, page 53.
Thanks, Chair Phillip. That's me again. So this paper relates to our risk appetite in our risk management framework. And the intent of this paper is to get feedback from the committee on whether the existing appetite remains appropriate or requires adjustment and further work. So just as a reminder that during the last triennium, elected members and the executive leadership team worked through some workshops and some feedback through to this committee a few times to build our first ever risk appetite for council. And now in this new triennium, it's a chance just to reflect on that and see whether we have things right or whether there's some work to do on adjustment.
So thanks for that, Stephen. So what sort of questions do you want the committee or feedback do you want from the committee, particularly on the risk appetite?
So the sort of questions, if we look through to page 55, just the sort of feedback or the question or the discussion is around, whether there are appetite areas, and we've got them listed there at 6.1. They're things like infrastructure, assets, and service delivery through to records and data. Whether these settings feel too conservative or too ambitious. Are there emerging risks since these were set in 2025 that may influence the our appetite positions? And do we have the direction of travel right? For example, with infrastructure, assets, and service delivery, we said we had a moderate appetite and we're looking to decrease that appetite over time. So that's the sort of discussion I'm looking for.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. May I perhaps offer a suggestion? Knowing a number of us were involved in 2025, so it wasn't a huge amount of time ago in developing these, and knowing those that haven't are fairly new around the council table. We are starting already work on our long-term plan, where we will be using this as a bit of a lens to be looking at some of our decisions. Personally, I feel like this is in a reasonable place. There was quite a lot of work that went into it. If it is unreasonable, that's going to become very apparent when we start looking at it through the LTP lens. So a way forward may be really using that when we're forming those judgments, and then testing that, and then if we need to make some changes, we could actually bring that back to another committee then, if there's comfort around that.
Yeah, no, I thought, when I looked at it first of all, I thought it was great. Then I looked at the direction of travel and I had them around the wrong way, and I was going, we wanted to decrease from moderate, which was meaning we're going to go to high, because it was like it was blowing my head, and I was thinking I couldn't understand that. Now that I understand it, the only one I've got there was the community relationships, which currently sits at low and is looking at increasing. So looking at taking, I assume by increasing, we're moving incrementally closer towards that would become moderate. And that's one I just want to question as to why it would be at increase.
And because this is something you and I share a passion on. This was some of the discussion I recall, if I recall correctly, around this was not being as risk adverse with how we are communicating and how we didn't do a lot of things because we had a high level of risk around it. The desire of the council was to start changing that. Coming out of that has been our social media tone has gone from being very corporate to more engaging, and potentially there is more that we can do. So it's looking at it from that lens.
Thanks, Chief Phillip. At the risk of sounding operational, I'd propose that we leave this alone. Steve, I think at the end of the LTP process, it may well be a useful internal audit tool to come back and say, right, through the process, we've made these decisions. We started out with that risk level. Because we're making some decisions, how did that change? And I think that would be a next level in terms of our maturity of having started with what we had, because we did put a lot of work into this when we did it. I think it might be useful at the end of our LTP process to bring this particular table on, 1.8.1 and have another column, post LTP, which direction did it go in rather than what we might have hoped. So not telling you how to suck eggs, but I'd leave it alone.
Really valuable comment, right? Can I make suggest an improvement to that? When you go through the LTP process, use this risk profile and say this is where we're at. Then this is what it actually means in terms of our expenditure. So if we lower the expenditure, what is it going to do to our risk profile? And are you willing to accept that risk? And more importantly, is the community going to accept that lower level of risk? And if you don't have a choice because it's unaffordable, how then do you have that conversation with your community? And I think, I wouldn't want to leave it till the end, but use it as a tool. Maybe you then do a summary at the end to say this is where we ultimately landed, but use it as a tool and track it as you go would be my suggestion in terms of improvement. But I think it's a really good idea. Because, risk is all about perception as well, right? And Councillor Peter has just demonstrated that as well, right? So, look, I'm probably a bit biased because I had a little bit to do with it as well, right? So if we go to the recommendation, what we're saying is, what I'm hearing from around the table is basically we're just doing recommendation 1, right? I think the direction is probably what Councillor Sharon has alluded to, but maybe might just need a bit more, I wouldn't say fleshing out's the wrong word. Do we need to record that this should be then used through the LTP process and updated as part of the LTP process? Question? Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that was my suggestion at the start, and I stand by that I don't think we should be over-egging it, but we should be using it as a lens to see how our decisions are matching it. And then within this committee, if we find throughout that process that we have a significant divergence, then we need to be testing that out. So I don't think we need to overdo it, but it absolutely should be a part of our decision making as we go through to see if it's reflective of this. There will be some changes. We will be making some decisions outside of this.
Therefore, on that basis, do we actually then say scrap 1.2 and say that the risk appetite be considered as part of the LTP process, full stop, as a formal recommendation to council? Is that acceptable? Is that appropriate? I'm looking towards the mayor. Or we've already got it included. That I don't want a resolution for the sake of a resolution.
No, and thanks, Mr. Chair. I almost just think we've given that direction as a committee. I think 1.1 is absolutely fine. I don't think anything necessarily needs to come back to full council because we're actually not reverting from what this committee had decided previously.
Thank you. Got a move and a seconder. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Thank you very much. Next item, therefore, is our Health, Safety and Wellbeing Management Report. I was going to say thanks, Steve, Vin, but I was also going to thank Gillian as well. Thank you. Take your report as read, Gillian. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of things, before I start. Thank you, Chair Phillip, and hello, your worship and councillors. Hope you have a lovely day. A couple of things I'd just like to bring to your attention from this report would be on page 68 and 69, 5.5 and 6.2, which both reference contract and management as part of the 2025 work plan and through that general comment there through the our risks. That is part of the 2026 work plan now. It's been identified through conversation that we've had. That's actually quite a large project that does branch across multiple teams in council. So we want to make sure that we include all the right people at the table when we're having conversations around that contract and management and how we can best do that in a positive way for our contractors and our teams. So we will continue to report through to you on that. I'd also like to reference page 72 where we've got 8.0, the Safe Plus assessment, specifically 8.3, which references the time frame. In the report it was given as March, April. There has been some developments there with MWLS, so that's now going to happen in July 26. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions. Must be good. Sorry, Gillian, I've got a question for you. All right. On page 69, we talk about the Paiatua water treatment plant gas vapour, and it's moved to green. The question I have is you'll be reviewing this risk to see if it remains critical. When's that going to happen? Do you have a time frame on that?
Thank you, Chair Phillip. That's a great question. So my understanding from that will be because that refers really to our chlorine gas, that will be reviewed as part of those critical risk hazardous substances audits, for want of a better word. We did do that last year, the hazardous substances audit for that team. I've yet to finalise the details for the water plant with our water team, but that is in progress of being done. So
you do it annually? Is that an annual one?
Correct. We will do that one annually because it is a high risk.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Steve. Thank you.
That was quick, Chair Phillip. Just one on there on page 68. They'll standardise a contractor induction and motion process. So what is a standardised? That you had a whole lot of them or something?
Thank you very much, Councillor Steve. So at the moment, we need to understand how our sites are inducting our contractors onto them. We potentially have various ways of doing that depending on the site that you're attending. So we need to make sure that what's happening in those inductions is consistent across all sites. So they're including those critical risks that we may have on sites and including things like fire or earthquake evacuation and stuff like that.
Supplementary. So now, if you were, yeah, it must. I'm surprised that wasn't in place because, you know what I mean. Because, as alluded to in the early days of this meeting today, about past risks, health and safety wasn't around. But health and safety's been at the threshold for, in my time, 15 years. Or even more when, this is in the freezing work era. And like you couldn't go anywhere.
Certainly not saying it's not happening, it's just, are we recording that in a consistent way across council? But I think Steve would like to speak to that as well.
Yeah, just I completely agreeing with what thank you. Yes, acknowledging what you're saying there, Councillor Steve, and completely agreeing with Gillian on this. I think the risk that we're wanting to make sure that we've got good controls for at the moment around our contractor safety, specifically around induction and monitoring of our contractors, is that we operate a delegated system where our contract managers have responsibility for all parts of that contract, including the health and safety parts. And we don't have, fully standardised levels across all of council in place at the moment. So we did step one, which we've now completed, which to make sure all our contractors are pre-qualified before they can engage in any work with us. And now we're just moving on to standardise the next step in the process, which is induction. Now we do know that inductions are happening, but what we want to make sure is that they're all happening to the level that we are happy with across all parts of council, remembering that we do everything from, Three Waters contracting right through to consultants and other things. So it's just making sure that standard is there. And as Jess pointed out earlier, we're also building that into our procurement and our project management processes so that we know and then can audit the standard. So that's kind of where we're getting to.
So just a quick one then. So every contractor must submit their health and safety policy to you before they can get on site too, don't they?
Yes, so every contractor must be pre-qualified, which means that either using SiteWise, which is our provider, so they've gone through an assessment process which includes a review of their health and safety policy, yes. So all of that is already in place and operating well. So this, what we're talking about is the next step past that as we move further into the contract.
And just one question on the percentage of contractors pre-qualified. The 89%, you got -5%. Does that mean it was 84% previously or 94% previously? I assumed that's what it meant. Yeah.
I guess if I could make a comment, it alludes to the question I asked at the workshop prior. We had an occasion 2 or 3 years ago where some work needed to be done on the band rotunda in Woodville to make some little finials and corner pieces that had broken off over the years. And a local retired carpenter cabinet maker offered to do the job. And he'd only charge for what he was having to outlay. But he used to make a lot of those finials and things like that, and he had some. But he wasn't allowed to do the job because he wasn't on the contract list. And he said, I'm not going up to Dannyville to do it, but induction course on safety and so on. He was about 83 or 84, but certainly, working on the ground, doesn't have to get up ladders or anything like that. And that's an indication of the things that we do miss out on, or we end up paying a whole lot more for because of mitigating risk.
Right, I've got a question here. On our indicators, one indicator that I see is missing, that you may want to consider adding, is the number of contractors you've audited and their pass or fail rates. I think that would be, to me, that's actually a lead indicator, because it's saying is, look, we've got 100% of our contractors who we've done an assessment, right? And they all passed, right? Now, I know we've got a special relationship with Downer through the alliance, but there'll be other contractors as well. And it doesn't need to be a full audit, but just an assessment. And that, to me, then provides us assurance that our contractors are doing what they said they're doing as well. Is that feasible? Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So we've got a recommendation there on 1.1. Can I have a mover, please? I'll move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Peter. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Next item on page 75, our health, safety and wellbeing policy.
Thank you, Chair Phillip. Thank you, Ms Scott and councillors. Hopefully I'll just take this as read, and if you wish to provide any feedback, we welcome that. Thank you.
Feedback or questions? Or do you want feedback separately? Now, if you've got any feedback now? Any feedback now?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I support this document. Thank you for making clear some of the roles and the responsibilities. It's written concisely, so I have no issue in its endorsement.
Thank you, Chair. One comment. Just as a new elected member coming in reading this, it was really good to see the different lanes and pieces that you have to look after and where our responsibilities lie, and it helps highlight a lot of that stuff. So it was really actually very good to read. So, yeah, thank you.
I don't see any. No? So basically we go back to the recommendation. Thank you to move. Thank you. All those in any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. As against, carried. I thought Malcolm either had a fly or would want to. He acknowledged that he'd actually signed the policy. Oh, did I ask for a seconder? No. Oh. Thank you. Pull me up on that one. All right. All those in. Right? You're about to? All right. Thank you. All right. All those in favour, please say. I got distracted by. No. Yeah. Huh?
Has Ellie talked to someone about?
Right. Next item, 7.7 statutory declarations. Delegations, I should say. Delegations. Oh. Yeah. Well, he's got 8 days of conflict.
Look, I obviously take it as read. I mean, the main point, I suppose, for elected members to take away from this is that our delegations are all under review and we incorporate into a single document. The goal is to bring that back in April, if I recall correctly. I've made it very clear to the team that delegations are the council's to give ultimately, and that when it comes back as a combined package, both this committee and the council will get the opportunity to make any comment as it goes. But so this is, I suppose, more of a heads up about where we're at than anything else. Happy to take comment and observations. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Chair Phillip. This is certainly something I've indicated that I want us to dig into and look at, and I certainly want to look at it as well. I'm not sure if there's just a piece missing that was meant to be attached, but that is the current register as of now. The report speaks about the policy and the register, and I think that might have been missed off. So my request is that gets. I don't actually want to wait until the next Audit and Risk Committee, so that gets circulated via email to all committee members, actually to all councillors and the Chair of Audit and Risk. So at least we can start giving some thought to the appropriateness. We also meet as a council monthly, and if there is anything we need to look at more quickly, more than happy for us to look at that within council. This is really important though, team. Delegations is our real balance, because we have to make sure that we're not tying up our staff members and we're allowing them to get on with the work that they need to do. But also there are some things that we need some oversight on.
Yeah, so I was struggling when I was reading this, to be frank. It seemed to be a lot of legalese and it was, my head was doing my head in a little bit. But to summarise it, the way I read it was that we can delegate to the chief executive as council some things. There's some things we can't delegate. There's quite an extensive list of things we can't delegate, and the chief executive can sub-delegate to other suitably qualified people. I was keen to see the delegation register so that I could understand, how much is delegated and, what does that look like. So, yeah, it's going to take my head a little while to get around and understand what the impacts of... So with delegation, of course, we have to make sure that things are delegated to the correct people and that they can do their job properly to the point. But we also don't want to over-delegate either, I assume, because in other roles that I've been in my work career, I have seen where things get over-delegated and then someone goes off half-cocked and does stuff that's not aligned to the strategic vision. So I'm really, I saw this as being really important, and I thought this is something I really need to get my head around because it was, tricky. So looking forward to seeing the register.
Unfortunately, Councillor Peter, there is a lot of legalese in there. A lot of it's driven by statute. I suppose my starting point, and by the way, Sonia, did you get that action on the register? Yeah. We'll get that circulated straight away. I'd missed that. I apologise, councillors. There is a ultimately, the way I think about it is a cascade. Yes, some of it's concept, but ultimately it's your delegation. Even to the CEO can delegate down, but of course within the guardrails that you may seek to impose within those delegations. So all that is important, and ultimately it's the line of accountability and responsibility. So the fact that you've got two documents is unwise, in my view, and so bringing them together so there's a one-stop shop for who's doing what, who's entitled to do what. I think any chief executive would find that useful.
I've got a comment, right? I think just for the committee, delegations are an important internal control. So but they've also then got to be monitored. I have actually seen when people have actually gone outside their delegations and there's no process for actually monitoring that. That to me is a serious risk. The other thing too is in here, welcome to local government. You've got a thing called the Local Government Act, which enables the Chief Executive to subdelegate. Then you've got a thing called the Local Government Rating Act, which happened to be passed in the same year, which doesn't allow the Chief Executive to subdelegate. All delegations have got to be done by council. So delegations, by their very nature, because as what Malcolm has said to, are based on statute, you've got to make sure that you're complying with the legal requirements within the statute. Right? And then there's all sorts of Building Act and all sorts of stuff that I don't know about that also needs delegation as well. So it's a minefield if it's not done correctly.
I concur with that, Chair. One of my observations is that when the time the job is, I often get asked to sign off on this and sign off on that. My first question always is, do I have the delegation to do that? So one of the process things I'll talk about later on is actually papers should formally say you have the delegation to do this and reference it, so there's a line of sight on that stuff, rather than just assume that the delegation exists and off you go, because that can get you into trouble.
Yes, very much so. And I've had an argument with an auditor once that you signed this off, Philip, you didn't have delegated authority to do it. And I go, yes, I did. I was acting chief executive at the time, therefore I had the chief executive's delegation. But you didn't sign it off as the acting chief executive, right? So that's how pedantic it can get, right? But I could actually then go back to the acting chief executive's register and say, here I was acting for this period of time.
And had the council appointed you acting chief executive?
Yes, or I don't want to. Yeah, because what they did, as part of the delegations, the annual report from the chief executive, he said the following people will be acting in any of my absences during this period of time. So for this period from January to March, it's Joe, and from April to June, it will be the other Joe. So yes, but delegations, I think, it's normally they don't trip us up, but when they do, it's a major. Seconded. I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Can I have a mover? We move into public excluded. I'll move. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Scott. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Oh, perfect timing. Right. So we stop the live stream quickly.